Welcome to Murder and Everything Else. My name is Joy.
And my name is Cheryl, and Joy and I are two very old friends who are going to talk about murder and everything else. So I just want to announce that my internet is up and running. I have Wi-Fi again, and it is so fast. It's greased lightning, as they say in Greece. So I'm happy about that because I had to wait. Y'all know I had to wait a long time, and I guess they had changed to fiber optics, and it makes a huge difference. And apparently, the line was broken. Nobody bothered to fix it until I moved
Oh
in
my
and had to wait
gosh.
3 weeks. And I asked the guy, I'm like, was it only, how many apartments did it affect? And of course, it was only mine.
Of
Did I
course.
talk about this last week?
I don't know. It's pretty good. If this is your first time listening, guys, neither one of us have memory problems.
You know what? I might have already mentioned this because I remember giving a shout out to La Starza.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
When you said Grease lightning, I thought you said Grease lightning, as they say in Greece. I almost, I
Oh,
almost fell off my chair. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they don't say that
well,
in Greece.
you know what? You could have taken it that way. That's hilarious. I
Oh
just
my gosh.
assumed everybody would know it was Grease. But anyway, I do think, I'm sorry, this is old news because I believe I said it last week. However, at the time I gave a shout out to La Starza, I did not know how fast my internet connection was going to be from Greece.
She's been using her hotspot to um to record each week, and there is a workaround for everything, but I have to tell you, we've been having a lot of electrical storms here, and yesterday and the day before. Now remember, before the rain and wind actually starts, it's like 100 degrees with 100% humidity. And
Oh my
then,
gosh.
with the rain and the wind, just like a tropical climate, it'll cool things down, but then it heats back up again when the storm's gone, right? Well,
Right?
imagine the power, because the power flickered multiple times yesterday and the day before. And I think it's kind of funny because the thing that happens is the Wi Fi gets shut off, and then watch everyone start to slowly freak out. But of course, the thing that one person did mention was, well, what are we going to do when the air conditioning stops working? And I was like, big freaking deal. You're going to sit outside in your bathing suit and with a fan, like a hand pump fan, where you fan
Mm.
yourself. But of course, we didn't have that happen. So the trade off to losing the Wi Fi is you're going to be hot. So I I don't know, Cheryl. I guess I have to say then keeping the Wi-Fi and the AC was probably a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Uh,
So yeah, it's a good thing that you were so patient because I don't know if anyone in this house could last that many weeks.
oh my God. Well, the thing is, you feel completely helpless because all I could do was wait. It's not like I could do anything. It's not like
Yeah,
I could go outside and fix it myself. You know what I mean?
right.
Um.
Remember the
Anyway,
good old
yeah.
days when somebody would have cable in like an apartment building or whatever, and then like the other neighbors would like run a line to the box that was on the roof and
Yes.
steal the cable. I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if it was that easy? I've seen videos
Uh,
where someone will go and knock on a neighbor's door and go, I was wondering if you could give me your Wi Fi password because we've been using your Wi Fi and I noticed you changed your password recently. And and the person will just be like, "No, I'm not giving you my Wi-Fi password. I didn't
God.
I
Oh
didn't know
my
that you
God.
were using my Wi-Fi for free and illegally anyway." And then there'll be like an argument between the two people and it's like, "Pay for your own freaking Wi-Fi."
Yeah. Oh my God. I had a neighbor who didn't realize she didn't have it secured, so I did uh, let her know you need to
Nice.
put a password on that. But
Well,
yeah.
anybody who has been to our house and had to set up the Wi-Fi knows that our password is epic. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Anyway, Cheryl, I'm so glad to welcome you into the century that we are all in. You are back, hardwired. You can watch all your murder shows and your court cases and your TV chases and your, you know, whatever arrests and your warrants being served and the body parts floating in the vats of muriatic acid.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have a retraction. Well, I have a retraction that I have to issue this week. It's from the Blade Runner episode. I said that the shot put was when you stuck that ball in the crack in your neck and then you throw it as hard as you could. I said that it was developed by the ancient Romans, but actually I believe it was the Greeks because remember the Olympics began with the Greeks. So, I said that my
Well, you didn't hear me. You didn't hear me correcting you,
I said
so
that my
I'm just
husband told
guilty.
me that it was developed by the ancient Romans, and he reached out and said, "I never said that." I said, "You're right. It was Greeks." So thanks to the fact checkers out there who are listening to our episodes and keeping us honest. Um,
Well, Gabe has his reputation to protect because you're saying that
he
he's
does.
the source of this information,
He
and he's like,
does.
I never. Please stop quoting me,
Right.
misquoting me.
Right. So, also, you know how in other updates, you know how I talked about like literally um a month ago we got onto Google Podcasts and then like 3 days later I got a notification saying Google Podcasts would be going away. So please upload everything to YouTube, which I did. But in along with that, I got a notification that Spotify for Podcasters, which is the platform where we upload and edit our podcasts, they were going to take away that ability to use their editing software. So we had to move to a new place. And so that's where Cheryl and I are recording from today. And I have to tell you, I hate having to learn something new, um but I'm willing to do it for this podcast. So, if you hear something that sounds yucky or you don't like it, I don't mean content, like grainy or muffled, or please reach out and let us know at murderandeverythingelse@gmail.com because the only way we get better is if we hear from people what they like and what they don't like. All right? Keep it clean. Cheryl, you got any updates?
I do. So when this is uploaded, the trial probably would already have started because as of the recording of this, tomorrow starts jury selection for the trial of Alec Baldwin.
Oh,
So by the time this, I want to say airs, but that's for visual. Anyway, by the time this is uploaded, the trial probably would have started already, and it's expected to last about 10 days. So, I'll be talking about that.
yeah, you will.
Yeah, because I feel so strongly about it. It's like, I'm not going to go into it too much, but it's like, well, he has experience with it and he was a producer and blah, blah, blah. But at the time that this incident happened, he was on the set as an actor. And I don't think it should matter whether he's had experience. I really don't. I know people are going to um, probably have words about this, but if I were the actor, um, it doesn't matter whether it's him or me holding the gun. I'm not I, I know I've said this before, but it's not. It's the armorer, which yes, she was found guilty, and also that Dave Hall guy, the assistant director, handed it to him, and that guy getting a plea deal is I have problems with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, So obviously, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on this. And remember, this is just my opinion. Thank you very much.
That's right. And I am interested because I know that we'll probably get some snippets of Ilaria and her her hilarious accent. So I'm looking forward to that.
Her constant
Yeah.
ebb and flow
Yeah.
of an
How
accent.
you say cucumber? So anyway, shout out
I
shout out to people who go on vacation somewhere and come back with an accent. All right. On that note, let's head into shout outs. Okay, guys, my friend Doreen mentioned several times that she had bought something on the TikTok shop. And so I have a shout out to the TikTok shop because now I'm hooked. To date, I have bought gummy candies, instant ramen noodles, a coffee concentrate, and a pool floaty that we blow up and just sit in the middle of the driveway to get a suntan in, and I am loving it. These items are usually heavily discounted on the TikTok shop and way cheaper than normal. So, if you're looking for something cute and fun, yeah, you need to head over to the TikTok shop. I don't know how these people are making any money.
mm. Well, the same with what Timu. We don't know. Probably costs like cents, pennies to make.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, Cheryl, what about you? You got any shout outs for us?
I do have a shout out. I just watched the documentary on Celine Dion. Um, it's not like I'm a massive fan of hers, but I really love her just because whenever I see her, she seems very genuine and she's just so full of life and she's fun and she just seems like she's a good person. And I don't, so my sister accused me of living under a rock, which I have to admit, I told you I don't watch news or I don't know. I didn't hear anything about it, but she has a disease called,
Yeah, where her
which I think
bones
it's a,
basically you become trapped in your body.
called
Yeah.
stiff person syndrome, which is a very odd name. But yeah, anyway, she's very, very transparent and so brave um, to do this. Well, I think she wanted to let everybody know what was going on because she was going to have the that residency again in Vegas, and she couldn't do it, and she feels so bad about having to cancel. She loves performing, so she misses the audience. And spoiler alert! So if you want to watch it and you haven't, fast forward, but she allows the cameras to film everything, and I mean her having an episode, and it is heartbreaking.
Mm,
I was crying. I finished watching it at like 4:30 this morning, and I'm in tears watching her.
whoa.
Um, so I just wish her the best. I really wish her the best.
That sounds really, really sad. I gotta tell you, you know what I avoid? I avoid commercials where like the guy has to struggle out of the wheelchair to walk his fiance down the aisle and then he does it and everyone's crying, or the teddy bear that records the mom's voice, the grandma's voice, and then they give it to the baby because the grandma passed away and the baby calls the bear Nana. I can't watch them. So I'm not going to watch this because I don't want to sit around and just be blubbering all day long.
Yeah. Well, I watched it for you. But yeah, I just want to wish her the best.
Oh, well, hang in there, Celine, because. And I will always love you.
That would be great if we were
Wait, that's.
wishing Whitney Houston well. If we were giving a shout out to Whitney Houston, that would be perfect. But you might want to sing My Heart Will Go On from Titanic that Whitney was not in. But nice try, Joy. Nice try.
Woo, all right, guys. Just just in case anyone was wondering, I never got into any kind of singing program, right? That's
Listen,
straight
you
from
know
the
what?
heart, guys.
You can't get this anywhere else. Confusing Whitney Houston for Celine and thinking that the Olympics originated in Rome.
No,
Um, you can't get this
you
anywhere else.
can't.
I'm
You
telling
really can't. You also don't want to get it anywhere else.
you.
All right.
They're
rolling
sorry they're getting it here.
rolling on to letters from our listeners. Now we know why we don't have any. All right. Hey friends. We got we got a post on
Good.
Spotify from Gen T, but I can't read the comment because they're doing an update right now on Spotify for podcasters, which has disabled all the comments until they're done with the updates. So sorry, Gen T, but guess what? I guess that means we'll just read it next week. Anyway, Jen, I just wanted to reach out and say send us a selfie of you and your swag that we sent you, and we will post it on our Instagram. Also,
Yes, yes.
if you haven't checked out our Instagram, head over there. I have a picture of certain someone's husband drinking his coffee on Sunday morning, so check it out. Also, I talked over the last several weeks, I've talked about all of the multiple streaming platforms that we're on, one of them being YouTube. And I have to say that the first 3 comments that we got from a random listener on YouTube. This is so exciting. First of all, I don't know if you guys heard that, but I just burped. Secondly, the thing that's so exciting is our first 3 random comments from a listener, same listener posted all 3 of them, posted them on our episode number 4, Casey Anthony episode. We watched the Peacock documentary, and then we did 2 episodes, episode 4 and 5, I think, on Casey Anthony. And this person posted, I don't believe George at all. I thought her documentary on Peacock was very good, and I believe her. And the last comment was, I agree with you 100%. I hate that people hate her. I just want to say thank you because our first comments were not hate comments. They were 3 positive comments. And number 2, Cheryl, we are not the only people that saw that and felt very
I believed
strongly
her.
that we believe her. And
Yeah.
so I just think that it's just such a good feeling. One, that someone we don't know is listening to our podcast. And number 2, that they felt so impressed to leave a comment. So thank you to at
Yes, thank
user
you.
whatever at user anonymous person you are. We appreciate your comment.
Yes, we do. Thank you so
Yep.
much.
And if you
Mucho
send us,
gracias.
if you post a comment on any of our streaming platforms, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, audible.com, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, we will read them maybe on letters from our listeners. So there. And on that note, I am going to turn this over to Cheryl because guess what, guys? We are back this week with another murder episode. And as you know, Cheryl is our resident murder specialist. So take it away, Cheryl.
Yes, we are headed back to murder. And was it just last week? Because I can't remember 7 days ago. Uh, that you did. Was it the camping one? It
No,
was, right?
no. Some, yes. Summer, yes, no, yes. Summer vacation stories, yes.
Oh,
Because
summer vacation.
last
Well,
week,
it's sort of on along. Well, anyway, so much for that intro.
yikes.
Because I was going to say this story. This story involves camping. For some reason, I had it in my mind that you talked about camping, which I don't think you did. Now that I'm thinking about it more carefully, but you know that I love a story of a murder being solved after decades. I think it's incredible. It leaves everybody hope, gives everybody hope for these cases that have not been solved for a long time.
Hmm.
The only downfall is, and this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler alert. I hope you still listen to the whole story. Is when the perpetrator is dead, because then there's no
There's no closure.
justice. Well, there's no justice. That person's not going to be held accountable. But I guess there is some resolution, closure. Yeah, probably no closure, but I don't know. It's better than not knowing, right? So, as the title of this episode states, this is a story about solved. It's solved after 28 years. And my sources are Appalachian. Now, I have heard it were pronounced Appalachian, and I've heard people say that that is the correct way to say it. I am going to say Appalachian because it's very akin to the Prescott thing, where Prescott is
Well,
spelled
can I
Prescott, and people who are from there say it should be Prescott, but it reads Prescott. And I've always known it as Appalachian, and only recently I've heard that it should be Appalachian. I don't know. What are your thoughts
Well,
on
can
that?
I just weigh in here because I've
Yes,
actually
please.
hiked the Appalachian Trail. So
Okay.
before
And,
I
and the trail told you that's what it was
yeah,
called. The trail
I
itself.
am one with the trail. When I moved here, so for those of you who maybe are just joining us, I live in North Carolina. Before I moved here, I called it Appalachian because I am from the West Coast. And
Oh.
since I've moved here and I've heard the way that people in North Carolina and Tennessee and West Virginia and Virginia refer to it as Appalachia or Appalachian Trail. So I call it Appalachian Trail. It's
So what if I'm from Hawaii and lived in on the West Coast for a long time?
then
What
you
do I
have to
call
add,
it? Can I flip flop back and forth?
then
That won't drive anyone
you
crazy.
have to add a spam musubi to the end of it.
Well, it's just going to be a crapshoot at what comes out of my mouth because maybe I'll just see now I feel pressure to say Appalachian. All
No,
right.
no pressure, girl. No pressure.
Well, you just gave me that whole story about how the locals. Okay, so my sources are Appalachian Trail History, CNN, and MSN. So Julianne Williams, also known by many as Julie, was a 24-year-old from St. Cloud, Minnesota. She was very much interested in nature. She studied geology in college and hoped to impress her love of the outdoors on others. Laura Winans. Okay, and this is another thing. I try my best, even though sometimes I butcher the hell out of a name. I looked it up. There are some people that say Winans, which to me would be two N Winn,
Hmm.
but she spells her name is spelled Winans. And so I look at it as Winans. I've done research and it's pronounced both ways. So I'm going to say Winans. I'm sticking to my guns on this. I will give in to Appalachian, but I will say Laura Winans. She was also known by close friends as Lolly. She was a 26-year-old from Unity, Maine, who also had a strong connection to nature and the outdoors. She was studying to become a certified guide, and she wished to share her love of the outdoors with others. Julie and Lolly met as interns for a women's outdoor education program, bonding through their shared love of the outdoors. Julie and her partner Lolly had gone to Shenandoah National Park on May 19th, 1996 on a camping trip. Shenandoah National Park is a national park in the eastern United States that encompasses part of the Blue Ridge Mountains in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
And can I just
They were
stop
due,
you right there and just say it is absolutely beautiful.
I bet.
Absolutely gorgeous, but I also say if you've never seen it, you should at least try to see it once in your lifetime. But I'll also say that people from this part of the country call it the mountains. And as someone who grew up going to the Sierra Nevadas, the Siskiyous, the Cascades, and the Rockies, I'm sorry. Maybe they were once mountains, but they are at best a very beautiful set of rolling foothills.
Oh.
Okay? And I know someone might come for me on that, but trust me when I say, oh, also, I've been to Machu Picchu, okay? So I've also been to the Andes Mountains. So
Oh,
until
bragger,
you've
bragger.
been to a real set of mountains, and I mean the Rockies are some fucking big mountains, like you will understand that there can be beautiful rolling foothills that seem like mountains if you've never seen mountains.
Okay, so well, they were part of the Blue Ridge Rolling Hills in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Okay, so Julie and Lolly were due back by the 28th of that month. However, Julie was reported missing on May 31st after her roommate phoned Julie's father to inform him that she hadn't yet returned from her trip. After a day of searching, the bodies of the two women were found at a creekside campsite just off the Appalachian Trail. The scene was near milepost 42 along Skyline Drive, less than half a mile from Skyland Resort, a popular tourist locale, and close to the drive. The women were found bound and gagged with their throats slit. There was evidence that they had been sexually assaulted. Their murders sparked national conversations about safety in the wilderness and homophobic hate crimes. Because of their gender and sexual orientation, this particular case generated fear amongst campers and hikers and enlightened them to the reality that the wilderness was not necessarily safer than civilization. Not only did the not only did women become more cautious in the park, but the gay community as well. Investigators had to determine whether this case was the product of a random, unplanned event or whether these women were specifically targeted due to their gender or sexual preferences. This murder sparked an increase in safety awareness on the trail and also initiated the demand for legislation to protect those who are targeted for their gender and sexual orientation. At the time of the murders, there was one particular man who was suspected of killing 24-year-old Julie Williams and 26-year-old Lolly Winans. This man was Darrell David Rice. Rice was suspected of killing these women because he had been found to have previously committed crimes within Shenandoah National Park. He was also caught on camera entering Shenandoah National Park from the Front Royal, Front Royal, Virginia entrance the evening of May 25th. He was seen exiting the park at Rockfish Gap the next afternoon. Rice later returned to the park on the same day that the bodies of the women were discovered. This, along with his other crimes committed in the park, led investigators to name him as the prime suspect in the murders of Julie and Lolly. The year that he was accused of committing the murders of Julie and Lolly, Rice was already in jail for a 1997 case in which he was arrested for attempting to kidnap Yvonne Malbasha, a female cyclist, while on Skyline Drive. Rice had yelled sexual obscenities at the cyclist, grabbed her, and tried to force her into his truck. When she managed to get away, Rice proceeded to try and run her over with his truck multiple times. All throughout the encounter, Rice continuously demanded that the woman get in his truck. Unsuccessful in this abduction attempt, Rice eventually drove away.
Good
He was later
God.
found trying to run her over.
Multiple times.
How terrifying is that? Um, you're in this scenic, beautiful place, and you can't just relax. It's really sad, you just going for a bike ride and minding your own business, and someone's trying to freaking drag you into his truck, trying to run you over. He was later found and detained by park rangers. In this case, Rice was convicted and given an 11-year sentence. The prosecutors described Rice as being anti-gay and sexist towards women. In the document, United States District Court Notice of Intent to Introduce Evidence in United States of America versus Darrell David Rice case, holy crap, Rice is quoted to have said that women are more vulnerable than men and that he hates gays. He commented that Julie Williams and Lolly Winans, quote, deserve to die because they were lesbian whores, end quote.
Jeez
His
Louise.
view, his views on inferiority, women's inferiority, and his commentary against homosexuals also led Rice to be a prime suspect in the 1996 case. Though Rice was originally arrested for the murders of Julie and Lolly with 4 counts of capital murder, the charges against him were ultimately dropped when new DNA results revealed that it was not his DNA on the crime scene, but that of an unknown male.
Hmm.
Investigators still claim that Rice was involved in some way, however, no new evidence had come forward to support this claim. Because this DNA evidence proved that Rice was not the perpetrator, the case had lost ground. So let's put a pin in finding the murderer, and I want to talk about being in the wilderness because, like I said, you go out there and you feel like I'm one with nature, and I'm gonna,
Yeah.
you have this amazing experience.
I don't know if you saw that movie 128 Days where some dude
Yes.
gets trapped, or 128 hours,
Oh,
or
yeah.
I don't
No,
know if it was
120 hours, I
no.
think.
Well, he gets trapped between two rocks
and,
and he
and
has
it,
to
it
saw his arm off to save his life. I got to tell you, nature is really, really, really cool, but it's also unpredictable and basically just doing what it needs to do to get by. And, you know, I, I don't know about you, but like, I mean, just okay, don't be a city slicker and slap on a backpack and be like, now I'm going to be a country person, you know?
right. No, but it's sad that you can't, I mean,
Well, I mean, do some research. Come on, Cheryl. Let's face it. You get all
yeah,
these
I know.
people who watch, like, remember all the people who read that book, Eat, Pray, Love? And next thing you know, they're like, ooh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go over here to Italy and gain 40 pounds eating pasta. I'm like, you could stay home and gain 40 pounds eating pasta. You don't have to go to Italy. And I don't know if you saw in the news yesterday, but there have been protests in Barcelona of the people who live there against tourists because this time of the year tourism like basically like swells to a point where the people of Barcelona were so sick and tired they had water squirt guns and they were squirting people sitting at outdoor cafes, American tourists, and they were chanting go home. And the
Oh my
people, yeah,
gosh.
and the tourists basically had to like pack it in and run away so they're not getting like soaked while they're sitting outside. And I get it, like it's annoying to the people who live in Barcelona. Maybe it like clogs up the subway and makes it impossible for them to like I don't know, navigate walkways, but let's face it, tourism dollars really help the National Park Service and countries like Spain and Italy and the pasta industry and restaurants and hotels. And so, you have to think about like, I mean, I guess if you strap on a backpack and go wandering around in the woods somewhere, at least you're not glutting up the streets of Barcelona. But
I
remember to bring 600 pounds of gear because you may end up having to saw your own arm off to get out from between two trapped rocks.
And by the way, I'm gonna issue a retraction right now, so we don't have to wait till next week when Gabe corrects us after we've already recorded it. The movie is called 127 Hours, so neither one of us was correct.
128 days. So he trapped for 128 days, and finally he got so skinny he just fell out from between the rocks. That's my
Oh my
that's my
gosh.
that's my version. It's going to be called 128 Days Part 2.
Oh gosh, that's too good. So, getting back to the wilderness, it's widely common for individuals to assume they are safe from harm in the wilderness. While the outdoors is relatively safe compared to civilization, there are still some dangers when it comes to the wilderness and the Appalachian Trail. Hikers must be aware of their surroundings at all times, or else they could stray off the trail and become lost, which is one of my biggest fears is being lost anywhere, even in a parking lot, which I did one time and I started to panic because I didn't know where my car was. But lost in the woods, lost at sea, lost wherever, that is one of my biggest fears. Or running into wild animals or run into the wrong kinds of people. Since the 1996 murders of Julie and Lolly in Shenandoah National Park, the need to be aware of one's surroundings has increased. This crime broke through the shimmering veil, which disguised the wilderness as a safe haven and brought hikers back to a grim reality. The woods may not be as safe as they seem. This is not to say that no one is safe in places like Shenandoah National Park or on the Appalachian Trail. These locations are quite safe. Tragic occurrences such as this particular murder case reminds everyone, both hikers and US citizens alike, that crime can still occur even in the most remote of places. The news article Talk of the Trail, which was published just days after the discovery of Julie and Lolly's bodies, discusses and encourages safety on the trail. It states that park officials recommend that backcountry users hike in groups of two or more, which they were two. Tell family and friends of your itinerary and timetable, which they did. Be cautious of strangers, especially inquisitive ones. And tell no one of your route or planned camping location. And I think they mean someone you meet on the trail. Obviously, you want to let your loved ones know. Give them more information. Give them as much information as you can. And do not set up campsites near roads or developed areas. I That's questionable to me. Whether you want to be near developed areas or not. What do
Mm.
you think? Do you want to be closer to civilization or further into the wilderness? I don't know. That's the advice they gave, and I'm kind of like, I don't know.
Well, I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I mean, I I'm more afraid of like bears because
Right?
there are
So you want to see
bears in the Appalachian Trail and bears can outrun you, they can outclimb you, they can outswim you, and they're massive. I mean, one swipe of the bear's paw and you're goner. And anyone who says the black bears only eat nuts and berries, they're full of shit. Bears will eat you. Like they'll bite you and jump on you and like claw you. I mean,
I'm sure.
bears are basically the great white of the land. I mean, I I don't want to run into a bear.
Plus, I might want to be close to a Taco Bell or something. If I wasn't successful at fishing, I might want to
Well,
be closer to the 7-Eleven.
also like I think about these extreme runners, I can't remember I can't remember what they're called, but they do these like extreme marathoners, I think they're called, where they go out and run like 150 miles from like Utah to like Fresno or something. I mean, it's unreal. And
Yeah.
they're running in places where like bears could chase them or mountain lions or, I'm surprised that we don't turn on the news and see more instances
More?
of
Hmm.
bears or mountain lions just like jumping out and attacking people. So, being in the backwoods would terrify me without the bear spray and the shotguns and the like. And again, remember they can climb. So I feel like the guy skulking around with the razor blade to slit my throat would be less scary than the bears to me.
Oh, I don't know about that. Hey, has have you seen the movie? Of course you haven't, but anyone out there, have you seen the movie Backcountry? Talk about bears. I won't give a spoiler
No.
alert, but let me just say I've watched it about 5 times because I love that movie. Anyway, so even though investigators could not see how this case was more than a one time occurrence, many hikers still took extra precautions like traveling in groups and avoiding camping near civilization in order to protect themselves. Most hikers were not discouraged from traveling to the trail, however, they behaved more cautiously and more responsibly while there than they would have before the murders took place. The gay community also felt a sense of insecurity when it came to traversing the trail after the murders. In the news article Gay Group Wants Bias Angle Known, the gay community feared that if the case was a hate crime specifically against gays, then people need to know the risk is out there. After the 1996 double murder of Julie and Lolly, many still traveled from all over to experience the Appalachian Trail with no intention of allowing the murders to discourage them from continuing with their plans. However, most hikers took the risk seriously and hiked with added precautionary measures and a heightened awareness of their surroundings. The
I just
murders of
have to like stop you for a quick second, because
yeah,
I will say that I feel very sad for the gay community. Like, and if I just need to say this, there are so many hate crimes perpetrated against the gay community. There was the gay club shooting that happened in Florida. That was horrific. There's the killing of Gianni Versace basically on the front steps of his own home somewhere, again, I believe in Florida. There's so many hate crimes perpetrated, and it's just because people have some, I mean, obviously there's something really really wrong with them and they fixate on some immorality, whatever. It's like, you know what, if if you don't want to do the things that gay people are doing, then don't do it. All right? But if you feel like you feel so strongly that it prompts you, or something in your head is telling you to do something illegal or something that's like morally reprehensible, then maybe go talk to somebody about it, like a therapist or a psychiatrist or someone in the medical or mental health community, because it's not normal to be so incensed by someone's behavior that you have, that you're not connected to this group, but you want to hurt someone in this group. I just don't get it. And also,
right,
I
I
feel
know.
like people who are that like enraged about it, maybe it also means that they sense something about themselves that they are not comfortable with. So maybe they have
That's true.
gay urges or tendency. I don't know. All I know is that like it makes me, every time there is a hate crime against a, LGBTQ plus group of people or persons, it just makes me so sick to my stomach. I'm like, I don't understand.
You
I
know,
don't understand that level of hatred
right? I
or
know.
vitriol. So anyway,
So the murders of Julie Williams and Lolly Winans had a profound effect on the gay community at large, not just gay hikers, because both hikers were female and were in a relationship together. Investigators considered the idea that this crime may have been committed based on the victim's gender or sexual orientation. According to the congressional record, at least three hate crimes occur in the United States every day. In the year 2000, the FBI records showed that nearly 8,000 hate crimes occurred that year, averaging approximately 20 hate crimes per day. While the numbers fluctuate, it is hard to deny that these events are becoming more and more common. The congressional record has a powerful quote when it comes to hate crimes, stating that, quote, hate crimes send a poisonous message that some Americans are second class citizens who deserve to be victimized solely because of their race, their ethnic background, their religion, their sexual orientation, their gender, or their disability. These senseless crimes have a destructive and devastating impact not only on individual victims but entire communities. If America is to live up to its founding ideals of liberty and justice for all, combating hate crimes must be a national priority. End quote. At the time of the 1996 murders, legislation regarding hate crimes mostly dealt with crimes against people of certain races, religions, and ethnicities. However, the legislation did not protect those who were targeted because they were homosexual or lesbian. The gay community expressed major concern as to whether or not Julie and Lolly's murders were hate crimes against gays. They believed that if this case was ruled as a hate crime, then that would mean someone was out there specifically targeting gays and putting them at risk. This murder created not only paranoia for gays, but also helped to inspire legislation that would protect others like themselves in the future. This bill, the Local Law Enforcement Enhancement Act, would make it so that no American should feel that they are second class citizens because Congress refuses to protect them against hate crimes. This legislation cites the 1996 murders as an example of the tragedies that happen when people are judged based on sexual orientation, gender, race, religion, or ethnicity. Julie Williams and Lolly Winans case would be the first to be tried as a hate crime. As Attorney General Ashcroft states in Attorney General transcript of April 10, 2002 indictment of Darrell David Rice for the 1996 double murders in Shenandoah National Park. The transcript discusses how the amendment of the hate crime legislation to protect those discriminated against based on gender or sexual orientation would then allow prosecutors to request the death penalty in cases like this. Had their murders taken place outside of Shenandoah National Park, however, the hate crime sentencing would be all but impossible. Hate crime legislation that will protect those all over the United States, not just on government property, is a necessity that must be achieved so that every U.S. citizen can feel protected under the law. This case did not just open the public's eyes to discrimination, violence, and loss, it helped inspire legislation that would effectively prevent such crimes from happening again and punish those who commit these crimes to the fullest extent.
Hmm.
But let's go back to talking about catching the murderer or finding out or solving this crime. So, 28 years after the brutal killings of the two women, the FBI says it now knows who was responsible. On June 20th, 2024, so this was just last month. So, this is the other thing. I, I love that. So, I've been interested in true crime forever. So, I knew of this story this long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I know it seems like I should have been 5 at the time, but I was not. I was a grown adult and I was into true crime and I heard about this case and it was very sad and it seems hopeless. Like no one's ever going to be found. It was in the wilderness, and it's decades have gone by. But just last month, the FBI announced DNA evidence and a methodical case review helped identify a suspect in the killings. After all these years, DNA evidence positively matched Walter Leo Jackson Sr., a convicted serial rapist from Cleveland, Ohio. FBI Richmond Special Agent in charge, Stanley Metter, said in the news release, quote, even though we had this DNA match, we took additional steps and compared evidence from Julie and Lolly's murders directly to a buccal swab containing Jackson's DNA. Those results confirmed we had the right man and could finally tell the victims' families we know who is responsible for this heinous crime, end quote. The case had picked up.
How did they, was he already incarcerated?
Yeah, so hold on, don't get ahead. I'm going to answer that. The case had picked up momentum in 2021 when a new FBI Richmond investigative team conducted a methodical review of the case, taking another look at hundreds of leads and interviews. Evidence from the crime scene was sent to a private lab, which successfully pulled DNA from some of the items. Jackson, the man whose DNA matched, had a criminal history, including kidnapping, rapes, and assaults, the release said. But unfortunately, as I mentioned before I started reading this, unfortunately, he died in prison in March 2018 in Cuyahoga County, Ohio, authorities said. Jackson was a residential painter and an avid hiker who was known to visit Shenandoah National Park. U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Virginia, Christopher Kavanaugh, said it was in a retesting of the crime scene evidence that developed a profile that was uploaded into the national database that led us to Walter Leo Jackson Sr., ultimately resulting in the finding that there was a 1 out of 2.6 trillion chance that it had originated from someone other than Walter Leo Jackson Sr. Julie and Lolly were members of the LGBTQIA plus community. Kavanaugh said, and although their murders were originally believed to be hate crimes, he has found no evidence of that. The hate crime case was eventually dismissed due to the lack of forensic evidence. He says, make no mistake, this crime was brutal. This crime was definitionally hateful. Okay, can we just stop on that for a second? My grammar police friend. I did not know definitionally. Definitionally was a word. I thought they meant definitely. It's actually a word.
Well, the easier way to have written that sentence to use the word
Definitely.
definition would be the definition of this crime was hateful, but instead they said the crime was definitionally hateful. So
I
so
don't know,
he's
but I can't even
saying it
say it.
wasn't a hate crime per se, but the crime itself would be defined as hateful.
Yeah, it's hateful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 'cause I wish they. Anyway, nevertheless, he says we do not have any evidence that the victims were selected for or that Jackson had any knowledge of or was otherwise motivated by their membership in a protected class. And if the evidence showed otherwise, I would say it, he said. Kavanaugh was confident in the strength of the evidence, and if the suspect were alive, he'd act on the new information, he said. The families of the victims were not at the news conference. Kavanaugh went on to say, I want to extend my condolences to the Williams and Winans families and hope today's announcement provides some small measure of solace. So 28 years later, they have an answer.
Wow.
I think we're going to be able to, it's only going to get better and better, the DNA technology right now. I know that I'd have to do some research. I don't want to misquote dates and whatnot, but that when you're arrested now, it's, I believe, I don't know if it's state to state, but I don't know if it's a state, if it's just a general law across the US or if it's state to state,
Hmm.
but when you're arrested, your DNA is put into a system now. Um, so that when stuff, when this kind of thing comes up and they, after a certain time, they started hanging on, right, to DNA because they knew, well, some people had the foresight in law enforcement that there might be one day that we can use this, so they preserved this evidence.
Right.
But it's only going to get better and better. And so people who have committed crimes, their DNA is in the system, and that's how they are able to find it. I think that's what you're asking. So they
Interesting.
compared it
So
to that.
so do they have any information? I mean, I realize that these two women were murdered in 2016 and then he died in prison in 2018, but I'm curious if they had any, cuz whenever there's a crime scene they do all kinds of things, like they can say like they were dragged over here and then there was a there was a struggle over here, or they were inside their tents. I'm just curious, like, if there's any kind of like timeline, or were they able to like determine like, what happened, like the events that like occurred.
I didn't find anything on that, just that they had been bound and gagged and their throats had been slit. I mean, just the thought, where your imagination goes of what they endured. It's pretty awful. There was one thing I heard that one of the bindings, it looked like it was first on one of the girls' mouths and then was used on one of their ankles. The point the who reporter was trying to make was like maybe it was a crime of opportunity and not necessarily planned because he had to, for lack of a better word, like repurpose the restraint. It was first on one girl's mouth and then on the ankle. It's just awful. Again,
Yeah, I
because you
will say
go.
that sometimes you see in the news that people just snap. Like they'll just be
Mhm.
going along, do 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 do, and then it's like a switch gets flipped, and they just snap, and then they do something cuckoo bird crazy.
Yeah, but like I wonder, like, did they talk to him? Did he come up and was he friendly at first? Like you just think about those details. Like, were they completely blindsided?
Were they
You know,
sleeping? You know,
yeah, yeah.
were they
But
maybe, I mean, maybe, I don't know. He had seen them before and followed them. You just don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean, so even the recommendation to
Um,
hike and camp in groups of two or more. It's like even two is doesn't seem, you know.
well, that's why I think he probably waited until they were sleeping and then startled them. You know what I mean? Because it's not like they weren't trained ninjas. They weren't going to jump up and be like, "Hiya!" I mean, I had to tell
Right.
you, thanks to you, Cheryl, and all this murder stuff. I now can add this to another long list of places I will not be visiting ever again.
You're welcome. So I just want to. So there's other, obviously, there are other murders at the Appalachian Trail. For example, in 1990, Molly LaRue and Jeff Hood were murdered along the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania. Hood had been shot to death while LaRue had been sexually assaulted and stabbed. The murderer, Paul David Cruz, was arrested over a week later for the crime. In 2001, a 51-year-old Canadian woman named Louise Chaput or Chaput, I don't know, was stabbed to death along the Appalachian Trail in New Hampshire, and this murder is still unsolved. In 2011, a hiker named Scott Lilly was found dead on Virginia's portion of the Appalachian Trail. His cause of death was determined to be asphyxia due to suffocation. This murder is still unsolved. I mean, again, I think people get a false sense of security that you're out in the wilderness and the beauty of nature, like, gives you a false sense of security. You know what I mean? You're out there, it's quiet, it's beautiful, you think nothing bad can happen, and then you get stabbed.
But
I,
meanwhile, you
you,
have these, I mean, literally, if you go to YouTube, I used to be obsessed with these like Korean camping like videos where it would be like this girl who looked like she was a K-pop star. So she like flawless outfit and makeup and hair, and she usually has a teacup dog with her that's some fluffy variety that doesn't like poo or pee in the RV. And then they pull up, and it's usually pouring down rain or snowing to a remote location where there's no other campers. And then they open up this RV and they transform the wilderness into something that looks like out of Africa. And then they're like walking their dog by themselves with like these like thousands of dollars of camping gear in the middle of the night and cooking like these delicious like Korean meals over this like state of the art stove, then washing the dishes in this beautiful tent that's attached to their RV, that's attached to the car, that basically costs like $6 million. And then they put on these cute little ruffled jammies and they're recording the whole thing.
do you
And
think maybe there's someone with them recording?
well, now I do because, like, what the heck? I'm like, imagine how many, well, first of all, imagine how many viewers those videos would get if all of a sudden someone jumped out of the dark with this big old knife and was like, yeah! I mean,
No, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be doing that by myself. You are making yourself a target with your little teacup dog, and your
right?
ruffles.
I mean, and then the teacup dog just sits in the window of this like $6,000 million RV and just stares out into the dark night. And she basically has all these tea lights set up and a canopy and a little boom box, and she's brought literally like all of her diaries and all of her art projects from home, and she's sitting there writing like letters to her boyfriend in prison. I mean, it's unreal.
Are you serious?
It's unreal. I'm going to find one of these and send it to you. And then the next day they go hiking and she's wearing her K-pop outfit. She's got like her like, ruffled socks and her schoolgirl skirt, and there's white snow on the ground. I'm like,
Remember, you can't believe. Remember, we talked about this on the Ashley Madison episode, where you cannot believe these, YouTubers that look like they are so happy and have the greatest relationship ever. Meanwhile, the guy's been cheating for years. Um, and so it's the same thing. They make you see what they want you to see, but
it's
probably in
true.
in reality, she has a whole, like, crew.
Yeah. And it's
I
probably
actually
being
hope.
endorsed by like the company that gives her all this stuff for free. And the dog's not hers later on. She has to relinquish it by
Yeah.
she has to rehome the dog because it turns out she doesn't even know its name. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
unreal.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't. But I mean, I hope for her sake she has a crew and she's not out there
I
by
mean,
herself.
Cheryl, I even heard that these mukbang videos, they literally do not eat all that food. That
Oh yeah,
they just record and then they spit the food out or they throw it away or whatever. They record them putting it in their mouth, but then they spit it out because there's no way that these like 108-pound girls are eating 65 packs of instant noodles every day and staying
hmm
that tiny. So they're
yeah,
doing something because there are people who do mukbangs who do eat everything, and we've seen what they look like 3 to 5 years later.
right, right. No, yeah, it's all an illusion, everyone. I mean, I can't say for the mukbangers. I don't know if they eat it or not. But I've read comments when they're like, "Oh, I saw an edit right there." They probably spit out the
Right?
food. I don't know.
Well,
I would not go hiking. Although Joy has many like solo stories. She, oh, you guys, that'll be a whole other episode
I
where this woman
I
has
mean,
9 lives.
I
She's
will
got 18
say
lives.
I have not gone camping by myself intentionally. So I'll just leave it
What?
there.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
but I used to love camping. Love
Traveling, well,
camping.
and you travel by yourself to foreign countries,
Oh,
and
I definitely
I,
traveled to foreign countries by myself. But I never camped outdoors intentionally by myself.
okay, we're gonna have to leave a whole episode for you to expound on that because
Ooh.
I want to hear it.
We could do a whole episode called Camping Stories.
No, I think it should be Joy Goes Camping, and we
Ooh,
hear about your unintentional solo camping trips.
that's right. Hey, if any of our listeners out there have a good camping story, why don't you write in to us at murder and everything else
And we'll read
at
it.
gmail.com and we'll read it. And just for
Yes.
reaching out, who knows, we might send you a little something, something in the mail.
Yes. I was just going to say that earlier about our first YouTube comment that maybe we have to set something up where we start giving out merch again.
Ooh. You know what?
Stay tuned.
You know what? I could just start packaging stuff up that's in this room I record in and send it out. And then when you open it, you'll be like, what the hell is this? And I'll be like, oh, I found that in my sock drawer. Anyway, Cheryl, this was a horrible, horrible story. I do hope that the parents and family members and beloved ones of the two women in the episode, the two women that were so brutally murdered, I hope that they were able to get some peace with finding out what happened to
Me
their
too.
loved ones. But you know what's an even bigger crime?
What's that, Joy?
That we are out of time.
Oh, that is a crime. Well, thank you for listening, everyone, and don't complicate your day. All creativity, commentary, and opinions in this podcast belong to Cheryl and Joy. Music composed and mixed by Gabe McKeon. Logo and merch managed by Cheryl Callan. Podcast editing, advertising, and social media managed by Joy McKeon. Legal representation provided by John Boljezic. Please like, subscribe, follow, and listen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Audible.com, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. And remember, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok, or you can email us at murderandeverythingelse@gmail.com.
Bye, fishes.